Welcome to the Eyes Up Mindset podcast, where we explore what it means to grow daily and find our best in every aspect of life.
Welcome back to another episode of the Eyes Up Mindset podcast. I'm John Shirkey here with my friend and co-host, Jamie Wagner. Jamie, as always, good to see you. How we doing today?
A little bit chaotic. Like our lives are a little chaotic. You were currently on a sailboat, recording a podcast on a sailboat. I don't know how often that's happened before, but we're making history on the Eyes Up Mindset podcast for sure.
Still not a sailing podcast, but I am on a sailboat. Opportunity to go and spend some time with my wife and my father-in-law and do some really cool stuff and still get to spend time with you and our listeners, and just had, an incredible time with our guest today. And I mean, I'm going to let you talk about it because you always do, but like, I'm still, my brain is just kind of spinning right now. And I think it was just an awesome time to get together with him.
So us as coaches, when we're talking about kids, we talk about, oh, this kid gets it. This kid gets it. He understands. He figures it out. Like they know, they get it. Ed Molitor, who's on the pod today, he has a podcast of his own called The Athletics of Business. That's his kind of company group. And he's got a group called the Molitor Group also. And all this stuff that he does is because he gets it. He just understands, and he's a coach's kid, so he's around it for forever, but he understands what this life thing requires, right? And the conversation obviously draws that out. But for me, it's just these, and we talk about this there, but it's these tiny little changes in perception and changes in, maybe it might even be language, that the people that get it, they say it and you just start nodding along. And that was a lot of our conversation today, was him saying something and me like nodding and smiling because he gets it.
Yeah, well, he gets it. And it's also like challenging for us. Like, yes, he gets it. And this is what we are dealing with and what you are dealing with out there. And it's applicable. It's not pie in the sky sort of stuff. It's like, this is real life stuff. You need to start doing these things. Right. And just a cool dude. Like you said, business guy, former college basketball coach, big time college basketball, and couldn't be more real. I loved that he took the time to spend it with us. So
yeah, we talk about, like I said, this idea of getting it and not being able to describe it. I think that's unbelievable authenticity, right? Unbelievable truth in the words that he's saying. And I think if we could all live like that, it's a great model for us to think about. How do I do this thing daily? Take a step. Let's do it like he does.
Ed Molitor. Ed, welcome to the Eyes Up Mindset podcast. Great to have you here today.
Hey, Jamie, John, thank you so much for having me. I love what you guys are doing. I love your backgrounds. I love the Eyes Up Mindset podcast. I mean, just incredible stuff. And I appreciate you having me on.
We're so excited to have you. I'm going to repeat what you just said about the Athletics of Business podcast. I've taken some really awesome stuff from it, and I would encourage our listeners to go and check that out.
I appreciate
ASAP,
that,
man, because it's, not only do you have a voice for radio, you got some awesome stuff to give away. So
and go ahead and say it. I have a face for radio too. That's fine.
Absolutely. No, but I've taken some really great stuff from it, and just the concept of how you're trying to take from sport, which is so valuable to so many of us, and it taught us so much about life, and now transition it into the business world where, and I've said this on the podcast before, but we do so much of this stuff when we're doing sports. We think, oh, I'm committed to this thing because it's finite, or it's done in 3 months or whatever, and I can give this great effort for this period of time. But then we get out of that sports setting and we think that we don't have to do that anymore. Right. And I think that's just crazy, right. Kind of. So I think what you're doing is really cool also. So we're going to be a little bit giving each other a lot of praise here from the beginning.
I thought of 3 stories. As soon as you said that last thing, I thought of 3 stories to tell you, but let's go.
Well, go tell what. So tell us a little bit about, what you're doing, the Molitor Group, the podcast, the whole thing. Just give us the spiel.
It's been a really interesting journey. It really has. And the Molitor Group is in the athletics of business brand is really a culmination of experiences I've had going back to my childhood, growing up a coach's son and starting on the south side of Chicago. My dad was in the Catholic League, and then he moved up to the northwest suburbs of Chicago and brought the same work ethic, the same values, the same mindset up there. And it was different back then. That was 76. It was different, but people bought into it. And as I grew up, I was in the locker rooms, I was at the practices, I was on the buses, and I heard the same things over and over and over. So to me, that was just a way of life, just the way he went about doing things and how hard his team plays and how cohesive and close they were. And the whole, learning from failure and growing through adversity and going through all these things together just seemed normal to me. I would sit in cars with him. I'm not saying cliches, but we'd listen to cassettes of George Raveling. If it is to be, it's up to me. We'd listen to Zig Ziglar, right? We listen to all those guys. And I was reading John Wooden at God knows what age, right? And I was reading my dad's notes when he come home from coaches clinics. And I would sit up and stay late with him when his buddies would stay the night when they're in recruiting and things like that. And then when I went into coaching, in 1998, we got fired at Texas A&M. And I was like, God, it's been my whole life. I originally had been a pre-med major in college at Creighton, and I just kind of wasn't very mature. I thought the whole world revolved around basketball, right? I was genius, wasn't I? So anyways,
like a lot of college athletes.
Yeah. And so I get out and I go into coaching and was on a pretty good track. Things were going pretty well. I started Division II school here in Chicago at Lewis University and worked for an incredible man, Jim Weitzel, and went back to work for one of my college coaches, Coach Brony at Texas A&M. And my second year there, which was his sixth, he got let go. I was 28. Now, mind you, before I went to Texas A&M, I was living across the street from Wrigley Field. Okay, so my world, I'm like, I'm getting back to Chicago. I just want to try something different. And I got into the mortgage business, and that was the start of the first refi boom in Chicago. Great time to get into it. Had no idea what I was doing. My only training was fake it till you make it, literally fake it till you make it. And I got this gut feeling that I was moving away from a transformational business of making a positive impact on young men's lives so they can maximize their potential on and off the court into, transformational business, into a transactional business, right? In hindsight, I was wrong because the mortgage business is very transformational if you really think about it. I look back on it. My clients then were one of two sets of people. They're young folks getting their first home, which was probably the single biggest financial investment they had made in their life up to that point. Okay. And others that were refined to take cash out their hard earned equity to maybe buy a second home, maybe buy a boat, right? Maybe pay off college debt, whatever it was. So very transformational for those folks. But I didn't see that then. I was still young, I was still immature, and I thought everything revolved around coaching. But to speak to what you just said, Jamie, what I realized was the culture wasn't the same, the work ethic wasn't the same. The teamwork, even though I worked with an incredible group of guys, young guys, a lot of former athletes, just we had a lot of fun, a lot of 305 Cub starts on Friday afternoon at Wrigley, a lot of golf, but there was something missing. There was something different. And that's what it was. It was that edge, it was that going to battle every single day, that trying to incremental improvement, trying to get better. And all it was metrics and looking at numbers, which is fine. We all need stats, but that was literally what was driving us on a day-to-day basis. And that I didn't know it then, but that was going to be the foundation of the athletics of business. And I'm sure, Jamie, you've heard this, as I've said it before on the podcast with my dad, was I was raised to know two things. And I don't know if it was intentional on my dad's part or it stuck with me. The athletics are a microcosm of life. And for me, my game of reference, my sport of reference is basketball. For you guys, football, basketball is a frame of mind game. And you can say it about any sport, right? And to me, that's where it all started to happen. And as I kind of bounced back and forth between corporate America and college coaching, I just sort of knew this is the way I was training. And the reason I founded the Molitor group, where we do leadership performance coaching and keynote speaking, was because I missed the deep relationships. I missed the transformational relationships over the long term. We always talk about we're going to get in the trenches with you, right? I want to get in the trenches for you, for my clients, and work and take the journey with you. And that goes back to think about your guys in your football. You played for each other, right? The great teams, the championship teams played for each other. They went through crap for each other. And that's the way I built my business. And the Athletics of Business podcast, I have been blessed with some amazing guests. See, this is what's different. On my podcast, my guests carry me. On this podcast, you are going to carry your guests. So let's be really clear about that. Okay. So that's really the story behind that, though. But that's the big thing. And I think that's a difference maker. And if you look at today's business world, today's workforce, okay, they want three things. They want to know that they're valued. which we wanted in sports, right? We wanted overvalued. They want to know that the work they do is important. We want to know that our role is important, no matter how much or how little playing time we're getting. And they want to be coached. And who were the best coaches in our lives? They were athletic coaches. I can still think, I still remember Mr. Del Vecchio, sixth grade basketball. I had my arms folded. We were all sitting around shooting free throws with my arm folded. Next thing I know, a basketball hits me in the face. Never play basketball with your arms folded. That's what's going to happen. I am not folded my arms on a basketball court, no matter how many times I've been to practice as a coach ever since. Okay. But in all kidding aside, athletic coaches, the good ones, the great ones, the ones that do it for the right reason, are transformational.
No question. I love in your podcast, and then even just now, you're talking about not with, but for.
Yeah.
And like the shaping of a single word, and you do it a bunch in what I've heard, like instead of be your best, like, or be the best, be your best, right? Yeah. A single word can shape the way that you see and interact with something. And one of your recent ones, and one that's super relevant in the current context of our world, is that adversity is happening for us rather than happening to us. I love that framing.
Yeah.
Like, talk to us about how you work with businesses or work with individuals about reframing for rather than to when it comes to adversity.
Well, and I appreciate pointing that out. And that's the thing. Like, when you take the time and give yourself perspective, right? I mean, you really do. And you pause. And when adversity hits you, what do we do? Okay. A lot of people are all of a sudden going to become hypersensitive to it. They're going to overreact. They're going to overthink. Okay. They're going to make quick decisions. They're going to get very emotional. But when you take the time to pause and really take a deep breath, okay, and really reflect and like, okay, what does this mean to me? Where am I at? And what do I need to do to get to where I want to go? Okay. And how is this really going to impact me? And what opportunities are there here? Like, what does this mean? And I tell you a great example I use, my good friend Porter Moser, who's the head men's basketball coach at Loyola. Porter and I played together at Creighton, coached together at Texas A&M. And I'll never forget one day at the time I was coaching, I was a head junior college coach, and one of Porter's childhood buddies, Phil Lascala, who's the head boys coach at Lake Forest High School right now, which is where Rob Pelinka of the Lakers went. Phil calls me. He goes, "Hey, man, you talked to Porter today?" And I go, "No, I haven't." Now, mind you, they had just beaten Creighton 2 weeks previously. They got upset in the Missouri Valley tournament. This is 2007. He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "I just saw on the ticker Porter got fired." Come on. I talked to him. He didn't get fired. I talked to him 2 days ago. He goes, "I'm telling you, it just said on ESPN, Porter got let go." So I called Porter up immediately. No answer. And about 15 minutes later, he calls me. And I said, "Where are you at?" He goes, "McDonald's drive-thru." And I said, "What's going on?" And he goes, "I got let go." And he tells me the whole story. And it's a long, involved story, personal story about how it all went down. It's complete garbage. Garbage. And anyways, he will tell you to this day it was the single greatest thing that happened to him in his career. And here's why. He had some small Division I offers, okay, that he could have taken. And then all of a sudden, the assistant job at St. Louis came up with Rick Majerus. And he had met Rick years before when he was coaching at A&M. And this was before I got to A&M. They were playing in the Rainbow Classic in Hawaii. It might have been Maui at the time. Regardless, he did a film exchange with Rick at like midnight, okay? And Rick will ask, and God rest his soul, one of my all-time favorites, Rick would ask a million questions when he had an opportunity to. So him and Porter sat there and X and O'd about the opponent, and Rick really took a liking to Porter. Now here they are years later, and Rick offers him a job, but it's in people's eyes, okay? Maybe not our eyes, like the three of us would get it, but in people's eyes on the peripheral that just know it from the surface would be like, guys, took a step back. Now he's going to be an assistant, in that conference for Rick, and what he'll tell you is the single greatest thing that ever happened to him. I was actually reading an article today because I'm writing something for a virtual presentation I'm doing. And it talked about how it was devastating. It was the most fulfilling thing and rewarding thing because he learned so much from Rick about coaching. Right. And Rick was an X and O guy. Porter is an X and O guy, but there was so much more to it and how he went about doing things. And Porter will tell you, once he was able to reframe it and realize that situation presented the opportunities, like he may not be at Loyola today. He may never have gone to Loyola had he not gone and worked for Rick at St. Louis. That's just the way it all works out. And I think when you have the ability to take situations, no matter how small they are or no matter how big they are, and really find the opportunity inside of that adversity and attach it to your purpose, to why you're doing things. And you get that, we always talk about buy-in, right? As leaders, we talk about, we got to get buy-ins. Leaders need to understand you can't sell what you don't own. Okay. So you have to figure out a way to buy into the fact that there is an opportunity with this piece of adversity. And we talk all the time about this, growing through adversity, not getting through adversity. And you guys will get this. How many times, more games are lost than won, right? Because what happens? Teams start playing not to lose instead of playing to win. And when we try to go through adversity, just get through it. Let's just get past this. You're playing not to lose. You have the scarcity mindset. When you try to grow through something, you become really intentional with how you identify what you need to do to move from where you are to where you need to be. Knowing you may not get there, right? But knowing that you're going to come out the other side better. And that's, right when this pandemic started 8 months ago. And I got real intentional about the folks I had on the podcast. And they asked me what I thought. I'm trying to ask as many questions as I can, just get out of the way and listen. They asked me what I thought. And I said, honestly, I think one of two things are going to happen. I said, either your authentic leadership is going to be revealed. In other words, you're the real deal, right? Or it's going to be exposed. You're paying lip service and now you're screwed. And I'll tell you what, 8 months later, it's exactly what's happened. And on an individual basis, I think, it's never too late to start. There might be someone listening to us been like, well, I've kind of been going through the motions. Okay, stop going through the motions right now. Take that next step, get 1% better. And that's it. And I think one of the keys, and you talk about the one word and the little tweak on things. One of the things I love that Kevin Eastman says in his book and said on my podcast, it's the ability to be your best, even when you're not at your best. And I don't know if any of us the last 8 months have been at our best, and it's circumstances way beyond our control.
Boy, it's a lot in there, Ed. I want to go back to the story with your friend at Loyola and how you said, looking back now, he would say that's the single greatest thing that's happened to him in his career. Mm-hmm. Did he feel that in the moment, or did that take time? Because I think that's part of the skill, right? Is how do we get to that where we can make that transition as quick as possible? But it's not always going to be like, hey, oh yeah, now this is great. I just got fired from my job, and what am I going to do? I'm at the McDonald's parking lot, right? Yeah. I'm with my father-in-law for a few days, and we were just talking about, and not that we're a political podcast, and I know I just heard you say that about yours. We're not talking politics here, but he talked about no matter what happens with this election, he's like, this is what's going to happen in my business if this person wins. This is what's going to happen, or what I need to do if this person wins. And that was the first thing that he said to me. And it wasn't even like, oh, I gotta have this person, otherwise it's going to be this whole thing, right? It was just like, nope, boom, I'm here, this or this, and I, again, go back to your friend. It's like, how do we get to the point where we reduce that amount of time that it takes us to get that perspective?
You've got to control your discretionary thinking. Right. So in other words, you've got to control the conversation in your mind, and you've got to make a commitment. And really it starts with you believing in yourself. When you do things the right way for the right reasons, right, at the right time, you're going to have a level of self-confidence that's kind of unmatched. And when you have that, you'll develop that ability to, okay, next play. It's like basketball. You'll hear guys, and I love out here, there's some high school coaches that literally their kid will shoot a shot. He'll know the ball's not going in. They'll be like, next play. Right. But that's what it is right now. You've got to move on to the next play. You think about football. Okay. You guys turn the ball over. Well, your defense has got to come on the field and get a stop. That's it. It's all my Bears did yesterday. But anyways, that's another story. And you've got to, in overtime, and you're absolutely right. No, did he know that this was going to be the best thing that happened to him? No, but he bought into the fact that he made the decision, he owned the decision, and he was going to do every single thing he could to squeeze that sponge dry. I ask myself a question every night before I call it a day, and every morning, when I start my day and I check in during the day, and I ask all my clients this, whether they're the C-level folks, whether they're mid-level, or whatever level they're at in the business world or even the athletic world, is this: are you doing the best you can with what you have to become the best you are capable of becoming? Now, everyone's like, well, that's a long sentence. It's a long sentence with a lot there. So break it down. Are you doing the best you can emotionally, physically, okay, mentally? Are you doing the best you can? Are you giving the best effort? Are you giving the smartest effort? with what you have. What do you have? You have your resources, you have your skills, you have your circumstances. We have a whole lot of circumstances right now. Okay. We have our relationships, we have our inner circle, we have technology, we have knowledge and information at our fingertips to become the best you're capable of becoming. We don't know how good we're really capable of being, and we never will. But are we going to get 1% better today? Okay, are we gonna move forward? Are we gonna get 1% better today? And you think about that. If you get 1% better every single day, doesn't seem like a lot. It's a lot. Okay, it is really a lot. And when you do things that way, I think over time you start to realize. And you think about when Porter went to Loyola, they were still in the Mid-Con. Okay, they weren't even in the Missouri Valley yet. Valparaiso was still pretty decent. Okay, I mean it wasn't like they were winning that league, and all of a sudden they take the jump to Missouri Valley. And I can remember I would go to the games, and I don't get these seats anymore. Okay, I used to go to the games and sit at half court at the press table. Now it's like I'm just happy to be in the building, and I hope Porter listens to this podcast. And no, but I sat there and I remember thinking, God, you just got to keep grinding, keep working. And where's the magic, right? The magic is in the consistency. That's it. Showing up every day. And when you do that, something good is bound to happen. But that also, more importantly, that helps you keep moving forward, which right now, that's it. So you're talking about like your father-in-law. The only thing we can do when we wake up Wednesday morning, who knows? I mean, who knows what's going to be going on Wednesday morning? I mean, the sun may not come up or it might not go down. I don't know what the deal is going to be. But regardless, it's going to be a different time, right? We just got to keep doing what we have to do that day. Just keep moving forward. Pay attention to what we need to pay attention to, and then keep moving.
Well, you talked about controlling your discretionary thinking. And one of our big realities is that the way that we think shapes the way that we perform. The way that we think shapes the way that we act. And then the reality is that when you act with consistency, it actually starts to work cyclically where it starts to shape the way that you think, because you talked about it, this striving for excellence, this striving for belief in yourself. Like, I do the right things at the right times for the right reasons. Like, that thing reproduces kind of the magic, right? That's where the consistency is so powerful, because not only do your thoughts shape your actions, eventually when you do it with consistency and with integrity, your actions begin to shape your thoughts. And that's so powerful. And that's why asking a question like the one that you just explained to us every day, multiple times a day, becomes a way to shape how you behave. And we talk about everything is a skill. Everything is a skill that is learned over time. And we either drift towards good things because we're developing good skills, or we're drifting away from good things because we're developing not great skills. And you talk again, this framing that you do is so awesome. Instead of positive or negative, it's productive or unproductive, right? Productive thought instead of unproductive thought. And I love that also. But what are you developing today? That's that 1%. It's a skill. What skill are you working on today to get better? And like quotes, like talking about what are you putting in? What are you taking in? What sort of input are you getting on a day-to-day basis? That stuff, we don't think it matters, but it matters. On Wednesday morning, what are you listening to? Right.
Well, it's funny. It's funny you say that, because we talk, like I like to do triathlons right now. I was training for my first half Ironman this summer. And one of the things I realized about myself at this old age, okay, is after I swim, I love to eat. All right. And so I was having a conversation one day with one of my buddies, and he said something to me. I go, well, speaking of my diet, because he was all negative about something. He's just going down a bad rabbit hole. I go, you need to balance your diet. He goes, what are you talking about? I go, no, seriously. I go, you need to balance your diet. He goes, I go, what do you feed your mind on a daily basis? I go, seriously. I go, what are you feeding your mind on a daily basis? And I think that's something that's so critical that people look past, and we worry about all these things because you just said it, right? Where you direct your attention is what is going to create your thoughts. Your thoughts will create your emotions, and your emotions are going to dictate your behavior. So we have more control over our success. And then, like you said, it's a feedback loop. Right now, once you start consistently doing that, you have no choice but to look at things in a positive light, because you're looking at the next opportunity. And you're looking at the next opportunity. And see, that's what's so cool about it. But you talk about, like, okay, the quotes. What are you reading? What podcast are you listening to? who are you having conversations with? Like maybe I'm bad, but if you are in my life and you're negative and you're not feeding off my positive energy, it's not that I'm better than you. It's just I just don't have time. I just don't have time in my day. I get up at 4:30 every day. Okay. Sometimes 4. And I do that because of this. I have an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old who are hybrid school right now. So, you know, one week it's gonna be 3 days they're gonna be here. The other week it's gonna be 2 days, right? And so I need to get my work done. When you run your own business, you have a podcast, you have a wife who's amazing at what she does, and she works her butt off. And you have the kids, and then you have the kids' sports, and then you have your own workouts. You need to figure out a way to find time for yourself, right? So from the minute I get up in the morning, I'm only paying attention to from the first thing I said to myself. Because you think about it, right? We talk about control the control, but what's the very first thing first decision we make every single day is our attitude. And I get really intentional about that. It's going to be a positive thought, right? It's going to be a positive thought. And it's going to be, what's the one thing I always plan my day the night before? What's the one thing I need to get done today that will make everything else easier to do or unnecessary to do? All right. And then I meditate, I say my prayer, and I journal. Okay. If it's one of my swim days, I go swim, and then I feel like, and then I want to come home and take a nap. But that's another story. No, excuse me. All kidding aside, you control your thoughts and what you're looking at, paying attention to the start of each day. Are you picking up your phone? And are you looking at the text messages you missed last night? Are you returning your emails before you get out of bed? Are you, God forbid, right now, you should be looking at the news because there is not one bit of good information, okay, on there. How are you starting your day? And like you said, you're either moving towards the productive skills or you're moving away from them. You're moving in another direction. And at some point, doesn't that become our default? And that's it.
Design or default, right?
Yeah.
Design your day or
Mhm.
default into systems that you've just done and you don't know why you do them.
Right.
You don't know how or what brought you to that place. It's just normal. It's just
Right.
comfortable. And so can we design our day?
I do think it's important though, because like for us, and Jamie, you and I talk about this quite a bit because we have conversations and we talk about this and we engage with this every day. Right. But if you are out there listening and hopefully you have somebody because you're listening to our podcast and you're listening to Ed's podcast and you have people in your life that are modeling this sort of way to live, right? More intentionality, design, taking control of how you're thinking. But I think there are a lot of people out there that just don't understand what that even means. For us, it becomes second nature because we're engaged in it all the time. But I think there's people out there that are like, how do I even start doing that? Yeah, it sounds great, Ed, that you get up before, you journal, you meditate, you do your thing. But like, if that's not my routine, how do I even start that? I think that's probably the overwhelming part for somebody out there who's like, well, I don't have 3 people in my life that are feeding this good stuff to me every day, that I can model and keep me accountable. It's just like, this is how I have always lived my life. This is how my family lived their life. This is how the people around me live their life. And that's what I end up doing.
Well, and that's a great point. And my routine might not be your routine. Your routine might be at night. I think that's a key, especially right now. We have to have the ability to have a little grace with ourselves. You think about the sport you play, the sport where we come from, it's like, okay, keep running through the wall, keep banging your head against the wall. Like, how hard can you play? Like, play hurt, right? We didn't have any grace with ourselves. I think that's so significant right now to be able to give yourself permission to do things differently, right? To fail, to fail forward, right? To continue to grow. And when you look at it, what's your core values? Okay, what I always talk about being values. Core values are so key because of your reference point. You probably have heard this listening to my podcast. I talk about authenticity a lot, right? Have you guys read the book Legacy by James Kerr? Oh, you have to pick it up. Legacy by James Kerr. It's about the All Blacks, New Zealand All Blacks.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable, right? I just sent a bunch of them out to some folks I did a presentation for the other day. And I read it several years ago when it first came out. And when you hear these men talk about authenticity, these are warriors, right? These are legit guys that you think nothing phases them emotionally, which couldn't be more, couldn't be further from the truth. And they talk about authenticity. And I really took a curiosity, how I could apply that to my business and to my clients and to my life. And I break it down into 3 words: honesty, the ability to be honest with yourself and to be honest with others. Okay, you think about it in a team setting. Integrity, which you just mentioned, Jamie, and I break down integrity in terms of do your thoughts, beliefs, and your words, okay, align with your actions. Okay, so do I do what I say I'm going to do when I say I'm going to do it the way I say I'm going to do it, and am I consistent about it so you can trust me? And then a big one right now is vulnerability. And John, this kind of speaks to what you're saying. Okay, that's not my thing. Okay, go seek it, go find it, and make yourself a little bit vulnerable, make yourself a lot of bit vulnerable. People think vulnerability means, well, I'm powerless. And the reality of it is you're actually more powerful. Okay. Because you're going to fill that gap, whatever that gap may be.
Well, and I think you said it too. Go seek it, make yourself vulnerable, and you're going to find people that are willing to be vulnerable. I think there's also a lot of people out there that are like, well, I want to engage in something like that, but they're waiting for someone else to start the conversation. They're waiting for someone else to take that first step. And, so I have a mental health background, and that's part of what we talk about with people is like, hey, if you want to start that conversation, you've got to do it. Right? People around you are willing and able to have those conversations and engage in this stuff where you're talking about honesty, integrity, and being vulnerable. But you have to initiate that sometimes because there's not always going to be somebody there. You have to go seek it and take that step.
And you guys know, as athletes, we had a tendency to really internalize things, right? And not share our struggles at times. And I was on the phone with the college athletic director this morning, a good friend of mine. I'm not going to, it's because what I'm about to tell you, it's, in terms of privacy, but he said some of the conversations that their athletes are having with their coaches right now are mind blowing. The mental health challenges and it's, and I'm so legit when I say this, I hurt for these athletes and for these coaches, right? I literally hurt. I was talking to Marywood University Athletics last Tuesday, did a virtual presentation. It was all the head coaches, some assistants, and some of the athletes. And I said, I hurt for you guys, but there is nobody I'd rather be in a fight with if I was an athlete than your coaches and your coaches and your athletes and with each other, because there's something special about that bond. And, if you're listening and you're like, I just don't really have anyone, there is someone. And here's a funny thing that's going to happen when you open up to somebody and you make yourself vulnerable and you start talking about these sorts of things, you're going to end up helping them just as much as they help you. You're going to end up feeding off each other and develop a relationship that you never thought was capable. And it's going to be the law of attraction. Just doors are just going to open.
The interesting thing about that is John and I are not like humans, right? We're not really. Like, he is reflective and thoughtful and a great listener. And I am outgoing and kind of on top of people sometimes. Like, I'm the extrovert, he's the introvert. But the thing that has been the uniting force in our relationship from day one, from the very, very beginning, is that one of us, and I don't know who or how, we're playing Tetris one night till 4 a.m, and we start talking about real stuff. We start talking about vulnerable stuff we wouldn't talk about, the stuff that's real in our lives. And John played offense, I played defense. John's a big guy, I'm a skinny, right? Like, that's.
So is that why you smiled when I talked about the offense turning the ball over and you had to go back on the field?
Seriously, John has told this story on the podcast before, where when the offense turned the ball over, our defense was like rabid dogs, man, right? It was like we came out there flying around like it's our chance, it's our opportunity, we get to go. And he's talked about how that just buoyed him as a person to say, I'm coming off the field, head down, hang dog, right? Frustrated because we just made a mistake. We erred. And now, because our football team, ball control offense, like we played 50 snaps on defense instead of 80, like sometimes, because they just milk the clock. So any chance we got to go out and play, we didn't care if we were backed up, right? We didn't care. Like, we just wanted to go fire, go crazy. And that relationship, right? Yeah, absolutely. Because I was thinking that story when you said when the offense turns the ball over, the defense gets a shot.
Wasn't it funny how you guys started talking about stuff that meant something, like that feeling you get in your gut, like this is exactly what I needed, right? Or this is, someone has, and you guys, hey, I do this exercise with athletic departments, athletic teams, and I'll do it with businesses where they look at each other and they literally yell, I refuse to let you fail. I refuse. Like, when someone's there and legit, authentically has your back, right? and they're going to refuse to let you fail, and they're going to help you. That's such a cool thing. It's so powerful.
Yeah, and so Jamie, your point was, yeah, we came. It didn't take very long for us though to come off the field after we turned it over. We didn't score, whatever. For you guys to come running past us, like, hey, we don't worry, we got this. For us to then switch our perspective on what just happened for us too. It's like, okay, cool, they're going to take care of it, right? And I think that's where it grew. That, you know, like you said, I refuse to let you guys fail. That's how it felt when our defense ran on the field. It's like, don't worry, guys, we're going to be fine, you know. And then that built when, you know, Jamie, you and I were just talking about the other day, like, you guys gave up so many first drive touchdowns, you know, my senior year. And it's like, it didn't matter to us from an offensive perspective, because it's like, we're going to go down and score, and eventually you guys are going to figure it out. Right. And so just that trust that and that consistency, you know, coming from, but you have to have it, right? You have to have somebody saying, I refuse to let you fail. Right. I think that's a powerful activity. Wow.
Yeah. And you have to say it to yourself a lot. Especially right now.
A lot.
Yeah. Especially right now.
And I think when you are that person to yourself, you allow yourself to be that person to somebody else, right? When you demonstrate that integrity, that honesty, that vulnerability, guess what? You draw other like-minded folks to come in, to share that headspace with you, to share that heart space, because that's what we're talking about. This is heart stuff, right? Yep. And when you can give that away, you're going to get it back in spades, man. It's just going to come flying at you. And that's why I love listening to your pod, because I just feel like I'm getting filled up, you know. And that's what I hope ours is, and what this conversation does for other people today. And you know, that heart stuff, when your heart kind of overflows and gives it away, that's what all this coaching is about. It doesn't matter if it's coaching athletics, it doesn't matter if it's coaching business, doesn't matter if it's talking in your relationship with your spouse. Like,
well, you think about it, you just said it, like, we always talk, and so many guests talked about connecting the heart and the head, right? You talk about the heart space. Think about the best coaches, the ones who've had the biggest impact on your life, are the ones that the ones that would challenge you, push you outside your comfort zone, probably saw more in you than you saw in yourself, but they also had a ton of compassion for you, right? They knew that every single player was an individual who had different things going on in their world, and they were there to talk, to spend time. The door was open, whatever. It went way beyond, you know, it went way outside the sideline, the field, the end zone. I mean, way off the court. And that's what it's all about, because that's when you feel something, you know, everyone acts like there's this big secret to getting people to buy in. When you figure out a way to operate authentically, okay, and you've got to have the skills. You have to have the skills. You have to be committed to developing the skills. You have to be the face the team needs to see. But if you can get your people emotionally attached to you and develop this deep level of trust, and in order to do that, that goes back to what I said, you can't sell what you don't own. You've got to trust yourself. Like, you've got to know that it's not a facade. That's why you see so many different, you know, teams crumble when their backs are against the wall. That's why you see coaching careers after 20, 25 years, all of a sudden true colors come out, you know? I mean, some of this NCAA stuff that's going on, I mean, there's a lot of skeletons right now that are just right at the edge of that threshold of that closet coming out, and it's not pretty. And that's why you've got to do things the right way for the right reasons. And when you do that, you know, there's a great book out that I read years ago by David Brooks, The Road to Character. Yeah. And he talks about, and I never forget, I was actually on a business trip at O'Hare, getting ready to fly down for a business trip to meet with someone. It was very apropos of the book and the subject of what we were going through as an organization. And, you know, you talk about resume virtues versus eulogy virtues. Your resume is going to be a byproduct of doing things the right way. Okay. Your resume is going to be a byproduct of leading with the heart. And that just, you know, to me, and that's why I love what you guys do. And I tip my hat at you. Incredible podcast, incredible guests. I was so humbled to be on, but we need more of this, and we need more of this. And here's what's great. We talked about opportunity with adversity, right? When we get through this, and then we might not be through this till the end of 2021. We don't know, but are you going to be better? You know, what's your skill set going to be? What's your mindset going to be? What's your you know, I always call it basketball IQ, right? There's football IQ. What's your EQ going to be? How are you going to have developed deeper relationships, or are you going to have pushed people away? Are you going to be closer to yourself, or are you going to be further away from yourself? What is it? Are you going to have, you know, are you going to have made a difference, or are you going to have made a positive difference? Or, what's your legacy going to be? We're all going to have a legacy when this is said and done. And what is your legacy going to be?
Pretty awesome way to finish, man. I think that's an unbelievable challenge to think about daily, not just because COVID, not just because we're in a strange season like of life right now. What is your legacy? What's the eulogy virtues that you are leaving behind today, tomorrow, every day moving forward, man?
And before we wrap it up, you reminded me of something earlier, and I forgot to mention it. Dr. James P. Gills, okay, 6 double Ironman, which is bizarre in itself, but the real bizarre thing is he did the 6th one when he was in his 50s, okay? And I heard him on a podcast years ago, and they asked him, what was the key to your success? And there's a couple folks that talk about this all the time now, but I'll never forget it. I mean, I'd always studied Ironman. My dad did an Ironman years and years and years ago, and I was just always kind of intrigued by it. Not intrigued enough to actually do a full Ironman, okay, but intrigued. And what made them tick, right? And what made them go, and what made them so successful. And he said, it was my ability to stop listening to myself and start talking to myself, stop listening to myself, right? And you think about that, what's the conversation we're having in my head? So if there's someone out there, like, I don't have folks in my life like that. Okay, well, first thing, start reading and listening to the right things and start having that conversation in your head. Okay, and start controlling that. And the other story that I told the other day that I thought was pretty cool is something good is about to happen. I think we need that now more than ever. And again, not political, a little bit of irony there, not at all, but something good is about to happen in a sense, and not in the sense that you're not working towards that, right? The Stockdale paradox. We all know that. Jim Collins, Good to Great. When General Stockdale was interviewed about who didn't survive the Hanoi Hotel. Who was it? And he said the optimists. They just thought, okay, Christmas will come, will be released. Easter will come, will be released. 4th of July will come, will be released. And they died because they were optimistic that it would happen. But the ones that were realistic, right? So are you an optimistic realist or a realistic optimist, whatever you want to say, but you continue to work towards that. And I use the example of Bethany Hamilton. And Bethany Hamilton was a surfer and soul surfer. Okay. And it's funny because when this pandemic started with my kids, I'm like, okay, I can't watch kids movies 24/7 right now. I go, here's what we're going to do. My kids are little athletes. They love athletics. I go, all right, guys, we're going to watch sports stories that are based on a true story. And it sounded like a really good idea at first. Okay. So then, and then you start going through them, all of a sudden there's a few that got eliminated real quick, but we watched Glory Road. We watched Remember the Titans. My kids loved Remember the Titans. Okay. But then we watched Soul Surfer, which was about Bethany Hamilton. And when she was 13 years old, she got attacked by a shark while surfing. And they asked her what got her through that. And she said, I really felt like I needed to get back in the water. My mom and dad were kind of like, no, take your time. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to be nervous. But I was in a hurry to get back in. And they said, well, why are you in a hurry to get back in the water? She goes, I believe the sooner I got back in the water, something good was going to happen. And I think if we do this, and we don't know when it's going to happen, we don't know how it's going to happen or how it's going to show up. But if you wake up every single day and control the controllables, and you truly believe that something good is going to happen, right? I mean, it's a no-brainer how this is going to go. Safe travels, John. Jamie, good luck with the remodeling.
Thanks, man.
Well, thank you, sir.
Loved having you.
Take care. Thanks so much.
Later.
Bye. Thanks again to Ed for joining us today. As you're listening out there, the biggest thing for us is that if you find value in what we're doing, what you're hearing, please go and share it. It's cliche to say, hey, go rate, review, whatever. For us, it's bigger than that. All of those things help. So if you want to do those things, feel free to do those things. Check us out on social media, all of that stuff. But for us, Jamie, it's about giving good juice, right? Giving to people. So feel free to share this, find somebody that hasn't listened or you think would find value and let them check it out. Jamie, Ed, ton of challenges in there. And it's going to be hard to pull out one, but I know we were just talking about one. I think that stood out to both of us.
It's this idea that the magic is in the consistency, right? When we can reframe and shape challenge and adversity as for us rather than to us, or that we look to be our best rather than to be the best, those consistent reminders that what am I doing with what I have to be the best that I am capable of being. That consistent reminder shows up daily in our lives. That's when the magic happens. It's not this one-off. It's every day. And if you don't, like Ed said, have some grace with yourself and then get back on and be consistent tomorrow and the day after that.
And as always, live eyes up.